They called him a hero in 1969. In 2023, his grandson thought he was just a construction worker. But when Jake found that Foot Locker in the garage, everything changed. This is the story of a promise that echoed through 54 years of silence, and why some secrets are too sacred to share. What you're about to discover will destroy everything you thought you knew about war heroes, family secrets, and promises that echo through 54 years of silence. The text came at 11:23 p.m. on a Thursday. Jake Harrison stood in his dorm room, 20 years old and grinning like he'd just won the lottery. In his hand was an acceptance letter that would shatter 54 years of lies. "Grandpa, I did it. I enlisted. Marines. I'm going to be a rifleman, just like you were. Just like you were." Bobby Harrison's coffee mug hit the kitchen floor, exploded into pieces. No, the word came out like a scream trapped in a whisper. "Jake, no. You can't carry a rifle. Promise me you won't carry a rifle." But Jake didn't understand, and Bobby Harrison would rather die than explain why. What happened next would change everything. But first, you need to understand what Bobby Harrison had been hiding in his garage toolbox for 40 years. Jake's grin died. He'd expected pride, maybe concern about military life, not this bone-deep terror. "Grandpa, what's wrong? You were in the Marines. Mom always said you did construction during the war." "I built things," Bobby said. "Too fast, too desperate. I built roads and bridges. I never carried a rifle." Lie number one. If Jake had looked closer, he might have seen his grandfather's hands shaking, might have noticed the way Bobby's eyes went dead when he said the word rifle. But Jake was 20 and believed in heroes. He didn't know that sometimes heroes carry secrets that can kill them. That night, Bobby Harrison sat alone, staring at a locked toolbox he hadn't opened since 1969. Inside were things that belonged to a dead man, a promise that had nearly destroyed him, and a photograph that explained everything. But he didn't know that in 7 days, his grandson would find that toolbox, would discover the truth Bobby had died protecting. Bobby Harrison died exactly 1 week later. Heart attack, quick and quiet, the way he'd lived since the war. They found him in his recliner with a photograph in his lap. 2 young Marines in jungle fatigues, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning like they owned the world. Jake had never seen the photograph before, had never heard of the red-haired boy standing next to his grandfather. The funeral was supposed to be small, family only, a quiet send-off for the old construction worker who built houses and never talked about the war. But as they lowered the casket, something impossible happened. Old men started arriving. Dozens of them, veterans with weathered faces and careful steps. They didn't speak to the family. They just stood in silence, saluting a wooden box. One of them approached Jake after the service. "Your grandfather was the best rifleman I ever saw," the stranger whispered. "Saved my life in '69. Put down 6 VC with 6 shots from 300 yards. Don't know why he never told you." Jake stared at the old veteran. Rifleman? There had to be some mistake, but he didn't know that his mistake was about to become his obsession. 2 days later, Jake climbed into his grandfather's garage. The toolbox was military green, Bobby Harrison's name stenciled on the side in faded yellow letters. Inside were things that rewrote everything. A Marine dress uniform, still smelling of mothballs and old memories. Combat action reports, 38 of them, a bronze star with V device, a purple heart, and wrapped in oiled cloth like something holy. A journal. Jake opened to the first page. Read words that stopped his heart. April 15, 1968. "Mikey and I shipped out today. Made him a promise. If one of us doesn't make it back, the other takes care of what matters most." Didn't know then what that would cost. Mikey, who was Mikey, Jake, flipped through months of entries about patrols, about a friendship deeper than blood, until he reached the final page. June 18, 1969. "Today I kept my promise to Mikey. Completed my final mission, the one that mattered most. I will never carry a rifle again. Some promises you can only keep once." That's when Jake found the sealed envelope, addressed to Mrs. Catherine O'Sullivan, South Boston, Massachusetts, never mailed. And suddenly, Jake understood why his grandfather had lied about the war, why he'd begged him not to carry a rifle, and why some promises are too sacred to break, even if keeping them destroys you. But what Jake discovered in that envelope would change everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and the kind of mission that haunts a man for 54 years. What you're about to learn will explain why Bobby Harrison's final patrol wasn't about winning a war. It was about keeping a promise to a dead man who trusted him with something more precious than life itself. Now you're going to meet the man who changed Bobby Harrison's life forever. The bus that carried Michael Patrick O'Sullivan to Camp Pendleton arrived on a scorching Tuesday morning in March 1968. He stepped off with a duffel bag over one shoulder, a St. Christopher medal in his pocket, and the kind of grin that made drill sergeants want to wipe it off his face. 19 years old, red hair that no amount of gel could control, freckles scattered across his nose like constellations, and eyes the color of emerald seas that seemed to find humor in everything, even war. But here's what you need to understand about Mikey O'Sullivan. He wasn't just another Irish kid from Southie, looking for adventure. He was born to carry a rifle. Mikey O'Sullivan was everything Bobby Harrison wasn't. Where Bobby wrote careful letters home every Sunday, Mikey spent his evenings in the base canteen, buying rounds for homesick Marines and collecting their stories like treasures. Where Bobby studied field manuals by flashlight, Mikey played his harmonica and told jokes that made grown men forget they might die tomorrow. Where Bobby prayed silently before each patrol, Mikey whistled Irish ballads and acted like walking through enemy territory was just another day in the neighborhood. But there was something else about Mikey O'Sullivan that most people missed. Something Bobby Harrison noticed the first time they went on patrol together. In the jungles of Vietnam, Mikey transformed. The joking stopped, the easy grin faded, and what emerged was a rifleman with instincts like lightning and accuracy that bordered on supernatural. It was like watching a man step into his true skin. The first time Bobby patrolled with Mikey was on a routine sweep near Da Nang. Nothing dangerous, just two new Marines learning to work together. But 20 minutes into the jungle, Bobby knew he was walking with someone special. Mikey didn't just carry his rifle, he was connected to it. His movements were fluid, instinctive, like the M16 was an extension of his body. When Bobby moved left, Mikey was already covering the flanks. When Bobby crouched, Mikey matched his position without being told. They moved through the green hell like predator and protector, each covering the other's weaknesses. Their squad leader, Sergeant Martinez, watched them return and knew immediately what he was seeing. Harrison, O'Sullivan, your rifle partners now. Don't screw it up. They didn't. What happened next was the kind of partnership that becomes legend in Marine units. For 14 months, they patrolled together, 38 missions through the jungles of South Vietnam. They engaged Viet Cong in firefights, walked through villages where every face could hide an enemy, and brought each other home when home seemed impossible to reach. But more than that, they became brothers, not the casual brotherhood of Marines who serve together, the deeper kind, the kind where one man's rifle protects the other's life, where trust isn't earned, it simply exists, like gravity. Bobby learned Mikey's stories by heart during those long Vietnamese nights, when the monsoon drummed against their hooch and sleep wouldn't come. Stories about growing up poor in South Boston, about his father, Patrick O'Sullivan, who died building the Big Dig tunnels when a cave-in crushed him, and for other men, about his mother, Catherine, who worked 3 jobs to keep Mikey and his sister Sharon in school, cleaning offices at night, washing laundry for wealthy families during the day, and taking in sewing whenever she could find it. About the day Mikey came home from school to find his mother crying over unpaid bills, and how he'd promised her then that someday he'd make enough money to take care of her properly. About the day he first held a rifle at age 12, hunting deer in the woods outside Boston, and how he'd known instantly that this was what his hands were made for. About the Tet Offensive, and how Mikey had re-enlisted the very next day, not for glory or adventure, but because someone had to fight for the people who couldn't fight for themselves. I couldn't let other people's sons die while I went home safe, Mikey told Bobby one night as they cleaned their rifles. My old man died building something for this country, figured I owed it to him to help defend it. Mikey learned Bobby's silences just as thoroughly. The way Bobby's jaw tightened when he was worried about the next day's mission. The way he gripped his rifle a little tighter when they walked through certain parts of the jungle, where the ambushes were heaviest. The way Bobby's eyes went distant sometimes, like he was already seeing the life he wanted to build after the war. They developed their own language in the field. A slight hand signal meant movement ahead. A quick tap on the shoulder meant all clear. A gentle touch on the rifle stock meant follow me into hell, and we'll both come out singing. But it was more than just tactical communication. They could read each other's movements, anticipate each other's shots, share instincts without words. In combat, they moved like two halves of the same weapon, each instinctively knowing where the other's rifle would be. Their fellow Marines started calling them the twins, even though they looked nothing alike. Even though Mikey was Irish fire and Bobby was steady determination, because in the jungle, their rifles spoke as one. And somewhere in the green hell of Vietnam, between life and death and the constant sound of distant artillery, they made a promise that would echo through 54 years of silence. It happened on their 20th patrol. They were on a search and destroy mission near the DMZ when Viet Cong regulars ambushed them. From a spider hole complex, 12 VC against 6 Marines, not good odds. The attack came without warning. One moment they were walking point through elephant grass. The next moment the jungle exploded with AK-47 fire and the distinctive crack of Chinese grenades. Bobby took shrapnel in his leg, opening an artery and sending blood streaming down into his boot. Mikey's flak jacket stopped 3 rounds that would have killed him, leaving him bruised but breathing. They found themselves pinned down, separated from the squad, trying to survive in a kill zone designed to destroy them. That's when Bobby learned something about Mikey O'Sullivan he'd never known before. When death came calling, Mikey got calm, deadly calm, the kind of calm that comes from perfect unity between man and rifle. Bobby. Mikey's voice came through the radio chatter, serious for once, no jokes, no whistling. If something happens to one of us, the other needs to finish what we started. What do you mean? I mean there are people back home counting on us. People who need to know that what we're doing here matters. My mother, my sister Sharon, your family too. If I don't make it back, you have to carry that forward. And if you don't make it back, I'll do the same. Mikey, we're both going home. Promise me, Bobby. Promise me that if one of us doesn't make it back, the other finishes what we started. Promise me that the people we love will know we died for something worthwhile. I promise. I promise to. They made it out of that ambush. Both Marines wounded but still fighting. But something had changed between them. The promise hung in the air like incense, sacred and binding. Neither of them knew what that promise would cost. But Bobby Harrison would spend the rest of his life finding out. The jungles near the Cambodian border were angry that morning. Mortar rounds burst around them like deadly flowers blooming in the wrong season. NVA regulars fired from concealed positions with weapons blazing, their green uniforms blending into the canopy like ghosts made flesh. And somewhere in the chaos of war, deep in the green hell of Southeast Asia, Mikey O'Sullivan's voice crackled through Bobby's radio for the last time. But first, let me tell you about the mission that changed everything. They had lifted off from Fire Base Charlie at 0630 hours, part of a massive sweep heading deep into enemy territory. 24 Marines into Hueys, all of them carrying enough firepower to level a village. The NVA supply cache was critical to enemy operations in the region, and Marine intelligence had been planning this strike for weeks. If they could knock out that cache, they could slow enemy reinforcements heading to the Tet Offensive. But the North Vietnamese knew they were coming. The first sign of trouble came 5 clicks from the LZ, when the lead chopper's radio crackled with incoming fire. Taking fire from the tree line. Looks like Charlie's waiting for us down there. Bobby squinted through the Huey's open door and felt his blood turn to ice. The jungle below was alive with muzzle flashes. Not just a few, dozens of them, maybe more. AK-47s firing from spider holes like deadly fireflies. RPGs streaking up from concealed positions with their distinctive whoosh bang. Even some of the heavy machine guns that intelligence had warned them about. but none of them had ever faced. This wasn't going to be a cakewalk. This was going to be a war. Mikey's voice came through the headset, calm as always. "Bobby, looks like we're going to earn our pay today." Bobby keyed his radio. "Stay close, Mikey. We're going to need each other down there." The insertion was hot from the moment they touched down. The first Huey took RPG fire as it lifted off, sending shrapnel through the rotors and forcing an emergency landing to clicks away. Bobby's bird made it down intact, but barely. They hit the ground running, spreading out in combat formation, trying to find cover in terrain that offered none. Bobby felt bullets snap past his head, heard the distinctive crack of supersonic rounds. That meant someone was trying very hard to kill him. He threw himself behind a fallen log, trying to gain his bearings, trying to make sense of the chaos around him. Beside him, Mikey rolled into a bomb crater and came up firing, his M16 chattering, on full auto as he engaged targets in the tree line. Bobby watched his battle brother's rounds find their mark, saw at least 2 NVA soldiers drop. That stood for Sharon. Mikey's voice came through the radio, and Bobby could hear the grin in it despite the hell around them. The firefight that followed was unlike anything Bobby had experienced before. Marines and NVA soldiers traded fire through jungle so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. The radio filled with voices, Marines calling out targets, warning of movement, crying for CORPS MEN. Bobby took down 3 enemy soldiers in the first 20 minutes. Mikey got 5. They moved through the jungle like they were connected by invisible wires, each man instinctively knowing where the other would be. But there were too many NVA, and not enough Marines. The enemy had prepared this ground carefully, with interlocking fields of fire and escape routes through tunnels that honeycombed the area. What should have been a quick strike was turning into a siege. That's when the call came through. The supply cache was bigger than intelligence had reported. Not just a few weapons. A major depot with enough ammunition to supply a regiment. They needed engineers with demolitions to ensure complete destruction. Mikey was carrying the C4. The second phase of the mission required moving through 500 meters of enemy-held jungle to reach the cache, through terrain that was undoubtedly mined, probably booby-trapped, and certainly covered by sniper fire. A suicide run. But if they didn't destroy that cache, the ammunition would be used to kill American soldiers for months to come. That's when everything went wrong. An NVA sniper, hidden high in the canopy, had been tracking Marines all morning, waiting for the perfect shot. Bobby saw the muzzle flash too late, was already committed to a movement that left him exposed. The sniper was good, very good. His bullet was aimed center mass, designed to punch through Bobby's flak jacket like paper. Bobby was about to die. And then Mikey was there. Mikey threw himself between Bobby and the sniper's bullet, taking the round that was meant for his battle brother. Bobby watched in horror as the bullet punched through Mikey's chest, sending blood spraying across the green foliage. "Bobby, I'm hit. Hit bad." The words hit Bobby like physical blows. He low-crawled through the undergrowth, pulling against the weight of his equipment, searching until he found Mikey propped against a tree trunk, blood soaking through his jungle fatigues. How bad? Bad, real bad. Lungs punctured, getting hard to breathe. "Listen to me, Bobby. There's something you need to know." Mikey's voice was getting weaker, the kind of weak that comes when shock starts setting in, when the body begins the process of letting go. "Save it for the medevac," Bobby said, though they both knew there would be no medevac. "Not in this jungle. We're going home together." "No, we're not, and you know it." Bobby watched Mikey struggle to breathe, watched blood foam at the corners of his mouth, watched his best friend fighting a losing battle against time, blood loss, and the inexorable mathematics of warfare. The Marine who had been everything good about America was dying, and so was the man who carried him. "Bobby, remember our promise. If one of us doesn't make it back, the other finishes what we started." "I remember." "Good, because I need you to do something for me. Something important. Anything. In my pack. Back at base, there's a letter, sealed. It's addressed to my sister Sharon, but it's not the letter she's expecting." "What do you mean?" Mikey's laugh came through the blood, bitter and painful, the laugh of a man who's run out of time to be young. Mikey, if you make it back and I don't, I need you to deliver that letter personally. Not through the mail, not through the Red Cross. You get yourself to Boston. You find Sharon O'Sullivan, and you give her that letter yourself. Mikey, you're going to deliver it yourself. We're both going home. No, Bobby, we're not. I'm bleeding out. Radio's dead, and we still have a mission to complete. Bobby looked at the demo charges in Mikey's pack, looked at the jungle between them and the supply cache, looked at his dying friend. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what Mikey said next. Bobby, promise me you'll find Sharon. Promise me you'll tell her what happened here. Promise me you'll make sure she knows I loved her. Until the very last second. I promise. And Bobby, Mikey's voice was barely a whisper now, almost lost in the distant sound of gunfire. Take care of her, if she'll let you. Don't let her spend her life grieving for a dead man. Mikey, what are you saying? I'm saying marry her, you idiot. Love her. Give her the life I can't. Make sure she's happy. That's the real promise. Bobby felt the world tilt sideways. Mikey wasn't just asking him to deliver a letter. He was asking him to take his place, to live the life Mikey would never have, to love the woman Mikey was dying for. Mikey, I can't do that to you. You're not doing it to me, Bobby. You're doing it for me, for her, for all the dreams I'm never going to get to live. Mikey's breathing was getting shallower now, each breath a struggle against the blood filling his lungs. Bobby, are you listening to me? I'm listening. In the letter, I told her about you, told her that if anything happened to me, she should find you, should let you take care of her. I've been planning this for weeks, Bobby, ever since I realized I might not make it home. You've been planning this. I've been planning to give you the best gift I could think of, the chance to love someone worth loving, the chance to build the life I always wanted but might never get. Mikey's voice was fading now, barely audible over the sound of distant explosions. She's going to need someone, Bobby, someone good, someone who understands what she's lost, someone who can love her the way she deserves to be loved. Mikey, I don't know if I can do this. You can. You have to. Because that's what battle brothers do. Bobby, we take care of each other, and when one of us can't complete the mission, the other one does it for him. Mikey pressed the demo charges into Bobby's hands. Finish the mission, Bobby. Blow the cash. Get home. Find Sharon. The words came out weak, but clear. Tell her I kept my promise, Mikey. O'Sullivan died holding Bobby's hand. No dramatic last words. No movie speeches. Just a young Marine who had given everything for his country, his battle brother, and a woman he would never see again. Bobby sat in the jungle for 10 minutes, holding his friend's body, letting the reality sink in. Then he picked up the demo charges. And finished the mission. Boston in July of 1969 smelled like freedom and summer rain, and the salt of harbor water that had welcomed too many soldiers home. Bobby Harrison walked down Commonwealth Avenue with Mikey's letter in his jacket pocket, feeling like a man carrying another man's heart. He had rehearsed what he would say 1,000 times during the flight home, practiced the words until they felt like prayer. Your brother loved you. Your brother died thinking of you. Your brother wanted you to have this. But when he stood outside, 412 Commonwealth Avenue, looking up at the brownstone where Sharon O'Sullivan lived, all those practiced words evaporated like smoke. How do you tell a woman that her brother is dead? How do you deliver a proposal from a ghost? The building was for stories of Boston brick, with flower boxes in the windows and Irish lace curtains that spoke of working families who cared about appearances even when money was tight. The kind of neighborhood where people knew each other's names and watched out for each other's children. Bobby climbed the front steps like a man walking to his own execution. The nameplate beside the third-floor apartment read S. O'Sullivan in brass letters that had been polished until they gleamed. Bobby raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. Once he knocked on that door, everything would change. For Sharon O'Sullivan, for the memory of Mikey O'Sullivan, for Bobby Harrison, who was about to deliver a promise that would define the rest of his life. He knocked. Footsteps approached from inside, light, quick. a woman's footsteps. The door opened, and Bobby Harrison found himself looking into the face of the woman Mikey O'Sullivan had died loving. Sharon O'Sullivan was 21 years old and beautiful in a way that made sense of every photograph Mikey had ever shown him. Dark hair pinned back in a simple style, eyes the color of midnight sky, a teaching dress that was clean and pressed despite the long hours she worked at St. Bridget's. But it was her smile that stopped Bobby's heart. It was Mikey's smile. The same warmth, the same light, the same ability to make a stranger feel like family. "Can I help you?" she asked, and her voice carried the faint lilt of Boston Irish that Mikey had never quite lost. "Miss O'Sullivan? Miss Sharon O'Sullivan?" "Yes, my name is Bobby Harrison. I served with your brother Mikey in Vietnam." The smile faltered, not disappeared, but changed, became careful, hopeful and terrified in the same breath. "Is he all right? Is Mikey all right?" Bobby felt the words stick in his throat, felt the weight of the letter in his pocket like a stone. "Miss O'Sullivan, may I come in? There are some things I need to tell you about your brother." She stepped aside without a word, leading him into a small but spotless apartment that spoke of a woman who took pride in what little she had. The furniture was secondhand, but well cared for. The walls were covered with photographs of family, including several of a red-haired young man in marine dress blues. Mikey's face smiled down at them from a dozen frames. "Would you like some tea?" Sharon asked, her voice steady, but her hands shaking slightly as she moved toward the kitchen. "That would be nice, thank you." She busied herself with cups and saucers, filling a kettle, arranging things that didn't need arranging, anything to avoid asking the question they both knew was coming. Bobby sat on the small sofa and looked around the apartment. It was exactly as Mikey had described it. Clean, modest, full of love and hope and the kind of faith that keeps people going through dark times. On the mantel above the fireplace was a single photograph in a silver frame. Mikey and Sharon together, both younger, both laughing. Mikey's arm around his sister's shoulders, Sharon looking up at her big brother like he hung the moon. Bobby understood then why Mikey had fought so hard to get home. This wasn't just a place. It was sanctuary. It was everything good in the world that war hadn't touched. The tea was ready too soon. Sharon sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap, her back straight. She had the composure of someone who had spent her career dealing with difficult news from parents, someone who knew how to be strong when strength was required. "Tell me about Mikey," she said quietly. Bobby told her everything. He told her about the bus arriving at Camp Pendleton, about Mikey's harmonica and his jokes, and the way he could make homesick Marines forget their troubles. He told her about the patrols they walked together, about the friendship that had grown between them, about the way Mikey spoke of her constantly, with love and pride and homesickness so deep it was like physical pain. He told her about Mikey's courage in the jungle, about the lives he had saved, about the respect he had earned from every Marine in the unit. And then, when he could delay no longer, Bobby told her about June 18th, about the mission near the Cambodian border, about the NVA regulars firing from concealed positions, about Mikey's sacrifice and his final words, about the last words Mikey O'Sullivan ever spoke. Sharon listened without interruption. Her face grew paler with each detail, but she never looked away, never asked him to stop. She absorbed every word like she was storing them up, hoarding the last pieces of her brother's life. When Bobby finished, the apartment was silent except for the ticking of a clock on the mantel and the distant sound of traffic on Commonwealth Avenue. "Did he suffer?" Sharon asked finally. "No," Bobby lied. "It was very quick. Some lies are acts of mercy. Some truths are too cruel to share." Sharon nodded, tears flowing freely now but her voice still steady. "He always said he wasn't afraid of dying. He was just afraid of not living first." She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief that had been mended several times. "Thank you for coming here, for telling me in person. You didn't have to do that." "Actually, I did," Bobby said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Mikey asked me to deliver something to you." He pulled out the letter, cream-colored and slightly worn from the journey. Sharon's name written in Mikey's careful handwriting. Sharon stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "What is it?" I don't know, Bobby said. Though he did know, I promised I wouldn't read it. Sharon took the letter with trembling hands, held it for a long moment without opening it. Would you mind if I read this privately? She asked. Of course not. I'll wait outside. No, please stay. I just need a moment. Bobby watched her walk to the window, where the late afternoon light made her hair shine like copper. She opened the letter, carefully, as if it were made of butterfly wings. He couldn't see her face as she read, but he could see her shoulders shake, could hear the soft intake of breath that meant the words were hitting home. When she finished, she stood at the window for a long time, holding the letter against her chest. Finally, she turned back to Bobby. 3 pages of dreams that will never come true. She sat back down across from Bobby, the letter still clutched in her hands. But that's not all he wrote. Bobby waited. He wrote about you too, about how you saved his life twice in the jungle, about how you were the best friend he'd ever had, about how he trusted you more than anyone in the world. Sharon looked directly at Bobby for the first time since reading the letter. He asked me to take care of you, Mr. Harrison. Said you'd probably blame yourself for not saving him. Said you'd carry his death like it was your fault. Bobby felt his throat close up. He said to tell you that dying was his choice, that he chose to throw himself between you and that sniper, that he chose to save his battle brother's life even if it cost him his own. Bobby felt tears he had been holding back for weeks finally break free. Sharon, I should have done something. I should have saved him. You did save him, Mr. Harrison. You saved his soul by coming here, by keeping your promise, by making sure his last words reached the person who needed to hear them most. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table between them. There's something else he wrote, something he wanted me to tell you in person. Bobby waited, not trusting his voice. He said you'd probably try to disappear after this. Go back to the war and get yourself killed because you thought you didn't deserve to live when he didn't. He said I should stop you from doing that. How? By asking you to stay in Boston for a while. By asking you to help me grieve for the brother we both loved. By asking you to tell me more stories about Mikey that only you would know. Sharon leaned forward, her eyes intense. He said if anything happened to him, you'd need someone to remind you that living isn't a betrayal of the dead, that the best way to honor his memory was to build the kind of life he would have wanted for himself. Bobby stared at this woman who had just lost everything, but was somehow trying to save him from his own guilt. I don't know how to do that, he said. Neither do I, but maybe we can figure it out together. And that's how Bobby Harrison's real mission began. Not the 38 combat patrols he walked through the jungles of Vietnam, but the lifetime mission of keeping a promise to a dead friend. He stayed in Boston for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of walking with Sharon through the public garden. 2 weeks of sharing stories about Mikey over dinner in her small apartment. 2 weeks of watching her grieve with the kind of grace that comes from a lifetime of caring for others. 2 weeks of falling in love with his dead friend's sister. He didn't plan it, didn't want it, tried to fight it every step of the way. But love doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives like spring after winter, like hope after despair. Sharon felt it too. Bobby could see it in the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching, in the way she saved the stories he told her about Mikey, filing them away like treasures, in the way she started to smile again, small smiles at first, then larger ones. On his last night in Boston, Bobby tried to say goodbye. I should go back to the Corps, he said as they stood on her doorstep. My unit needs me, Doc, do they? Sharon asked. Or do you need them? Bobby didn't have an answer for that. What if you stayed? She asked quietly. What if you finished your service here, in Boston? There are defense contractors that need experienced Marines to test equipment, ways to serve without dying. Bobby shook his head. I can't. I made a promise to go back and fight. You made a promise to Mikey too, to take care of me if he didn't come home. Which promise matters more? Bobby felt the weight of Mikey's words again. The real promise. Make sure she's happy. What are you saying, Sharon? I'm saying I think I could love you, Bobby Harrison. Given time, given a chance. I'm saying maybe Mikey knew that before either of us did. She pulled out Mikey's letter, now worn soft from handling. Listen to what he wrote at the very end. Sharon, If Bobby brings you this letter, it means I kept my word about coming home. I'm coming home in the heart of the best man I ever knew. Don't let him leave. Don't let him think loving you dishonors my memory. I want you both to be happy. I want you both to live the life I can't." Bobby stared at the letter, reading Mikey's words through tears. "He planned this, didn't he?" Bobby said. "He knew what would happen if I came here." "Mikey always was too smart for his own good," Sharon said, smiling through her own tears. Bobby Harrison made a choice that night, a choice that would echo through 54 years of silence. He chose to stay. He chose to love. He chose to honor his friend's memory by building the life Mikey had dreamed of, but never got to live. They married 8 months later in a small ceremony at St. Bridget's Cathedral. No uniforms, no military honors, just a man and a woman choosing to build something beautiful from the ashes of loss. Bobby never went back to Vietnam. He transferred to the Marine Reserve and took a job at Boston Construction, building the kinds of roads and bridges he'd told Jake about. Honest work, the kind of work that let him come home to Sharon every night. They bought a small house in Southie. Bobby worked construction during the day, went to night school for engineering. Sharon continued teaching, specializing in helping children whose fathers were overseas. They built a quiet life together, a good life. But Bobby never spoke about Mikey, not to Sharon, who understood that some grief is too deep for words, not to their friends, who knew only that Bobby had served with distinction in the war, not to their children, who grew up knowing their father had been a Marine, but never knowing about the battle brother he'd lost, and certainly not to Jake, their grandson, who thought his grandfather had been a construction worker who built roads during the war. Bobby kept Mikey's secret for 54 years, kept it through marriage and fatherhood and grandchildren, kept it through nightmares that woke him in cold sweats, kept it through moments of joy when he felt guilty for being happy. He kept it because some promises are too sacred to break, even when keeping them slowly kills you, even when the weight of them grows heavier with each passing year, even when your grandson enlists in the Marines and you have to choose between truth and terror. Bobby Harrison chose terror, chose to beg Jake not to fight rather than explain why, chose to take Mikey's secret to his grave rather than burden his family with the weight of it. But secrets have a way of surviving death. Truth has a way of finding the light. And promises, once made, echo through generations until someone brave enough to honor them steps forward. Jake Harrison stood in his grandfather's garage, holding Mikey O'Sullivan's proposal letter, finally understanding the man who had raised him, understanding that Bobby Harrison hadn't been lying about the war to hide his shame. He'd been lying to protect his promise to honor his battle brothers, memory to keep faith with a ghost who had trusted him with everything. Jake looked at the photograph of 2 young Marines grinning like they owned the world, looked at his grandfather's medals, looked at the letter that had started it all, and he made a choice of his own. 3 days later, Jake Harrison withdrew his application to infantry training, not because he was afraid to fight, but because he finally understood what his grandfather had been trying to tell him. Some missions are more important than war. Some promises are more sacred than service. Some loves are worth more than glory. Jake Harrison became a teacher instead. He taught history at the local high school, specializing in the Vietnam War. He told his students about heroes like Mikey O'Sullivan and Bobby Harrison, about battle brothers who kept faith with each other across decades of silence, about promises that echo through time. About love that survives death, about the kind of courage that doesn't make headlines but changes the world one life at a time. And every year, on June 18th, Jake Harrison and his wife drive to a small cemetery outside Boston, where 2 headstones sit side by side. Robert Bobby Harrison 1948 to 2023 beloved husband, and grandfather Sharon O'Sullivan Harrison 1946 to 2021 beloved wife and mother. Between them, a third marker, smaller, simple, Michael Patrick O'Sullivan 1949 to 1969 lost in Vietnam, but never forgotten his promise kept. Jake brings flowers every year, red roses for Sharon, white lilies for Bobby, and a small American flag for Mikey. He stands there for an hour, sometimes longer, telling them about his students, about the stories he's shared, about the promises that are still being kept. Sometimes he brings his harmonica and he plays Danny Boy for the battle brother who came home in another man's heart, for the promise that was finally fulfilled, for the love that conquered death itself. The wind carries the melody across the cemetery, past other graves, other stories, other promises kept and broken, but none quite like this one, none quite as sacred, none quite as true, because some stories aren't just about war, they're about what comes after, about how we honor the dead by choosing to live, about how love, once given, never really dies, that it just changes form, like Mikey O'Sullivan's love, which became Bobby Harrison's purpose, like Bobby Harrison's sacrifice, which became Jake Harrison's calling, like a promise made in the jungles of Vietnam, which echoed through 54 years of silence until it finally found its voice, in a grandson who understood. In a story that needed telling, in a truth too beautiful to keep hidden any longer. Thanks for spending time with us today. If this story of Bobby Harrison and Mikey O'Sullivan meant something to you, pass it on, because some promises deserve to be remembered, some loves deserve to be honored, and some heroes deserve to have their stories told. This is Still Standing Souls. Real stories, quiet strength, lasting hope.